Vous êtes fatigué d'entendre de mauvaises nouvelles et de fausses doctrines? Alors Radio Primitive FM est votre seule référence en matière d'information et votre seule source d'information. Vous êtes fatigué d'entendre de mauvaises nouvelles et de fausses doctrines? Alors Radio Primitive FM est votre seule référence en matière d'information et votre seule source d'information.
Number three, President Biden's federal agencies are stonewalling our legitimate companies. Number three, President Biden's federal agencies are stonewalling our legitimate congressional inquiry. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many scandals. There's so much corruption that's being uncovered. Every stone that we overturn leads to more and more corruption. And because of that, Mr. Speaker, a lot of the American people are simply getting lost in the barrage of evidence, in the barrage of allegations of corruption and the evidence itself. Let me go through just a couple of highlights here to bring everybody's attention to this, to help explain why we're doing what we're doing. In August 2019, President Biden said, quote, "I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses, period." 2 months later, he said, quote, "I never discussed a single thing with my son about anything having to do with Ukraine. No one has indicated I have. We've always kept everything separate," unquote. He then doubled down on those claims during the debates, and both Jen Psaki and Karine Jean-Pierre have echoed that straight from the White House press briefing room. Make no mistake about this. Everyone now knows those were all bold-faced lies. While President Biden was vice president, we know now that he had dinner at least twice with his son Hunter and Russian and Kazakhstani oligarchs. He spoke he spoke on the phone many times with Hunter's associates, at least over 20 times, at least that many.
Most people have no clue that in 2023, the best way...
Vous êtes fatigué d'entendre de mauvaises nouvelles et de fausses doctrines? Alors Radio Primitive FM est votre seule référence en matière d'information et votre seule source d'information.
He met with CEFC, that's Chinese energy company, while Hunter was working on their behalf. Now, here's a text message from Hunter Biden alone that is justification for an inquiry. Quote, "Z, please have the director call me, not James or Tony or Jim. Have him call me tonight. I am sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled," unquote. A confidential human source known well to the FBI and relied upon often alleged that President Biden received a $5 million bribe for services rendered. The House Oversight Committee investigation has been going on for a while, and the investigation has yielded many important facts. The investigators have found, here's a couple of samples. Number one, they found that Hunter Biden flew on Air Force Two at least 15 times and engaged in activities which Devin Archer testified was to sell the brand and enrich the Biden family. They found an email from Biden associate James Gillard which breaks down the profit agreement for a deal involving the Chinese Communist Party-linked CEFC, including, quote, 10 held by H for the big guy, unquote. They found a text message later that month from Gillard to Tony Bobolinsky, which read, quote, "Don't mention Joe being involved. It's only when you are face-to-face. I know that you know that, but they are paranoid," unquote. This is just a sampling of what we already know. Now, this impeachment inquiry will offer House investigators greater subpoena authority to receive information from evasive federal agencies. See, we have been impeded in the collection of all this evidence because the federal agencies under the executive branch are openly, aggressively trying to protect the president. We're going to have advanced authority now and a larger platform to share this information with the American people. Mr. Speaker, remember how we arrived here. When the New York Post reported the existence of the Hunter Biden laptop, now Secretary of State Anthony Blinken organized a group of 51 former intelligence officials to claim the laptop was Russian disinformation. Social media accounts were banned from sharing the story, and individuals who believed it were labeled Russian assets and conspiracy theorists. We now know that not only was the laptop not Russian disinformation, of course, it was known previously to the intel community and many of the individuals that signed that letter. They knew it was legitimate. They knew it was not Russian disinformation. They knew it came from Hunter Biden, and they hid it from the American people. And on July 4th, just a couple of months ago, the Federal District Court in the Western District of Louisiana, my home state, issued a 155-page court opinion. The state of Louisiana and the state of Missouri sued the Biden administration because they had a hunch, and they knew that the White House and its agencies, including the FBI, the DOJ, other federal agencies, were engaged in a cover-up. They were censoring and silencing the viewpoints of Americans they disagreed with. They would not allow conservative speech on the social media platforms. And we know from the evidence produced in that case and listed in the 155 court opinion that issued an injunction against the White House, by the way, just on last Saturday, upheld by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, the court points out that Elvis...
How do you quickly and easily unlock your brain's super...
official in the San Francisco field office of the FBI was meeting regularly with the big tech platforms in Silicon Valley there, regularly leading up to the election, and telling them things that they had to pull off the internet, that conservative voices and social media postings that they didn't want people to see. The FBI coerced, the court said, and then coordinated with the big tech giants to make sure that on Facebook and Google and Twitter at the time and all these other platforms that you couldn't see that information. And it wasn't just the Hunter Biden laptop story. It was a lot of categories of things. It included negative information about the economy. It included people's opinions, conservatives' opinions about the efficacy of COVID vaccines and the lockdowns and how crazy that was and what they were doing to school children. All that stuff was censored. They even took down jokes about the president. If you posted parody about President Biden, or even as a candidate or when he was elected, it was pulled off the internet. It's unbelievable, it's staggering. The judge says in the judge's words in the court that this is arguably the largest and the greatest attack on free speech in U.S. history. He called it Orwellian. He said it was dystopian. This is what we're facing. This is what this White House has been involved in. They did not want the American people to have the facts. And that's one of the reasons that we have to go to this next step. That's why, Mr. Speaker, we have to follow these facts where they lead. The facts are irrefutable. They have understandably set Washington ablaze, even though the American people weren't able to see it. The judge said millions of free speech protected postings were taken down from the internet, not seen. But it has set Washington ablaze. Why? Because we're bringing these facts to bear. We're laying them out for people to see. Our colleagues here, some of them don't want to see it. But as John Adams said, facts are stubborn things. And as expected, the D.C. and the National Press Corps have blindly accepted the White House's spin. And they're trying to convince the American people that our inquiry, even the impeachment inquiry, is illegitimate. Just 3 years after they carried the water for Adam Schiff and the Democrats on their crazy impeachment quest against Donald Trump. Here's a sampling of the headlines so far. Now remember, we just announced the impeachment inquiry step yesterday. Here it is so far from Time Magazine. Biden inquiry may be weakest in history. Oh, yeah. From CNN, the most predictable impeachment investigation in American history. From Reuters, McCarthy opens long-shot impeachment probe of Biden. From MSNBC, McCarthy's Biden impeachment inquiry is the Benghazi investigation on steroids. These headlines are going to increase. We know what's coming. We know that they're working against us, against the American people in this case, and for the White House. They're on their team. We get it. CNN is reporting this week that the White House is urging news executives to ramp up scrutiny of our investigation. In fact, now there's a memo going around they sent to all the big news agencies. As if weaponizing the federal agencies wasn't enough, President Biden is now publicly directing the free press to play defense for him. And you know what? They're willingly going along with it. Mr. Speaker, why? I'm just going to ask this question. It's a rhetorical one. Nobody can answer it here, of course, but we're trying to seek the answers to this. I think we know. Why? If there was no impropriety, why wouldn't the president provide congressional investigators with all the information we've requested? What do they have to hide? The president could make the short trip from 1600 Pennsylvania tomorrow. He could sit down with our committees. He could clear his name. We could do that behind closed doors. We could do it very discreetly with all the protection he needs. In fact, we'd welcome it. I mean, let this be an open invitation to President Biden. I know the White House is recording all this. They're watching what we do here. Here's the open invitation. President Biden, Secretary Blinken, any of the Biden family members and associates, or anyone who seeks to clear their name, anybody involved in this investigation at all, you can come right here. You are welcome here in Congress to our committees. We on the House Judiciary Committee, House Oversight Committee, Weaponization Committee, the Ways and Means Committee, any of them. Pick your committee, and we'll bring you in, and you can clear your name. Mr. Speaker, we would love to return our full focus to our regular and important work here. But the facts and our sworn oath to defend the Constitution require this inquiry. And I'll close this with this, and I'm going to bring up a couple of my colleagues who will share their thoughts as well. But remember that Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution itself expressly states that the sole power of impeachment belongs here to this House. And then Article 2, Section 4 says, listen to the language carefully, it's expressly written in the Constitution. This is not political talking points. We're not making this up. It says in Article 2, Section 4 that the President shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. My friends, I just listed just a small sampling, just the tip of the iceberg of the credible allegations and the mounting evidence that shows that Joseph Biden has engaged in bribery schemes, pay-to-play schemes. This is what the evidence shows. We have to follow it. We took an oath to uphold the Constitution. The Constitution requires this action. The inquiry is the appropriate step. We have no choice to pursue the facts wherever they lead, and we will leave no stone unturned.
Do you love boating? Well, freedom.
Mr. Speaker, barring declarations of war, impeachment is the most awesome power that Congress has. It shouldn't be a threat. It shouldn't be a political exercise. It's certainly not a pledge to be made on the campaign trail. This is the most serious business that we can engage in. No one should want to impeach a president. You can't take any pleasure in that. But after months of blocked investigations by agencies in this administration, it became clear that an impeachment inquiry was the only course of action to complete our necessary and important investigations. And let me explain why, because there's been some confusion and some controversy about this. Mr. Speaker, there are three irrefutable facts that have taken us to this point. Number one, President Biden lied directly to the American people. Number two, President Biden's family and their associates profited millions through shell companies. Number three, President Biden's federal agencies are stonewalling our legitimate congressional inquiry. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many scandals. There's so much corruption that's being uncovered. Every stone that we overturn leads to more and more corruption. And because of that, Mr. Speaker, a lot of the American people are simply getting lost in the barrage of evidence, in the barrage of allegations of corruption and the evidence itself. Let me go through just a couple of highlights here to bring everybody's attention to this, to help explain why we're doing what we're doing. In August 2019, President Biden said, quote, "I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses, period." 2 months later, he said, quote, "I never discussed a single thing with my son about anything having to do with Ukraine. No one has indicated I have. We've always kept everything separate," unquote. He then doubled down on those claims during the debates, and both Jen Psaki and Karine Jean-Pierre have echoed that straight from the White House press briefing room. Make no mistake about this. Everyone now knows those were all bold-faced lies. While President Biden was vice president, we know now that he had dinner at least twice with his son Hunter and Russian and Kazakhstani oligarchs. He spoke on the phone many times with Hunter's associates, at least over 20 times, at least that many we know. He met with CEFC, that's Chinese energy company, while Hunter was working on their behalf. Here's a text message from Hunter Biden alone that is justification for an inquiry. Quote, "Z, please have the director call me, not James or Tony or Jim. Have him call me tonight. I am sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled," unquote. A confidential human source known well to the FBI and relied upon often alleged that President Biden received a $5 million bribe for services rendered. The House Oversight Committee investigation has been going on for a while, and the investigation has yielded many important facts. The investigators have found, here's a couple of samples. Number one, they found that Hunter Biden flew on Air Force Two at least 15 times and engaged in activities which Devin Archer testified was to sell the brand and enrich the Biden family. They found an email from Biden associate James Gillard which breaks down the profit agreement for a deal involving the Chinese Communist Party-linked CEFC, including, quote, 10 held by H for the big guy, unquote. They found a text message later that month from Gillard to Tony Bobulinski which read, quote, don't mention Joe being involved. It's only when you are face to face. I know that you know that, but they are paranoid, unquote. This is just a sampling of what we already know.
Millions
now,
of
this
dollars
impeachment.
To his family. It also includes a Chinese national who wired $250,000 to his son. Joe Biden also lied to the American people about his family making money in China. He continued to lie about it even when the House Oversight Committee uncovered bank wires, revealing how the Bidens received millions from Chinese companies with significant ties to Chinese intelligence and the Chinese Communist Party. Just this week, we uncovered 2 additional wires sent to Hunter Biden that originated in Beijing from Chinese nationals. This happened when Joe Biden was running for President of the United States, and Joe Biden's home is listed as the beneficiary address. To date, the House Oversight Committee has uncovered how the Bidens and their associates created over 20 shell companies, most of which were created when Joe Biden was vice president, and raked in over $20 million between 2014 and 2019. We've also identified 9 Biden family members who have participated in or benefited from these shady business schemes. Now, what were the Bidens selling to make all this money? Joe Biden himself. Joe Biden is the brand, and Joe Biden showed up at least 24 times with business targets and associates sending signals of access, influence, and power to those prepared to pay for it. The American people demand accountability for this culture of corruption. They demand to know how these schemes have compromised President Biden and threatened our national security. They demand safeguards to be put in place to prevent public officials from selling access to their public office for private gain. Under the leadership of Speaker Kevin McCarthy, House Republicans have now opened an impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. By opening an impeachment inquiry, our investigation is now focused on whether President Biden engaged in impeachable offenses under the U.S. Constitution. It empowers Congress, elected by the people, to continue providing the answers, transparency, and accountability that the American people demand and deserve. In recent history, Democrats inflicted much damage on the credibility of congressional investigations by peddling the Russian collusion hoax. But this committee, under this majority, will not pursue such witch hunts based on manufactured allegations, innuendo, and no real evidence. Today, the House Oversight Committee will examine over 24 pieces of evidence revealing Joe Biden's corruption and abuse of public office. This includes emails, text messages, bank records, and testimony of Biden business associates. We will hear from legal and financial experts about this evidence and crimes that may have been committed as Joe Biden was sold around the world. The House Oversight Committee, along with the committees on the Judiciary and Ways and Means, will continue to follow the money and the evidence to provide accountability so that Americans know their public offices are not for sale. I now yield to Jason Smith, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Comer. Yesterday, the Ways and Means Committee released new documents showing President Biden was not just aware of his son's business dealings, but he was connected to them. In a newly released message to a Chinese business executive, Hunter Biden mentions preserving the, quote, keys to my family's only asset. That asset, Joe Biden. New evidence released in response to questions raised by members of the committee on both sides when Gary Shapley and Joseph Ziegler, the 2 IRS whistleblowers, testified in July, paints a disturbing picture of a revolving door between Joe Biden's office and Hunter Biden's business partners. According to a worksheet provided by IRS whistleblower Ziegler, then Vice President Biden's April 2014 official visit to Ukraine occurred only days after a series of White House meetings with Hunter Biden and his business associates regarding Ukraine.
Here's one thing you need to do before buying anything online. Don't spend another dime on Amazon until you watch this.
Returned stateside, the Ukrainian company Burisma announced Hunter Biden's appointment to its board. New evidence provided shows Hunter Biden using his father's position to gain favor with billionaire Miguel Alemán, including having Joe Biden host them at the White House in February of 2014 at the vice president's residence alongside Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim in November of 2015, and then in 2016 using Air Force Two to shuttle Hunter Biden and his business associate to Mexico City. Whether it was lunches, phone calls, White House meetings, or official foreign trips, Hunter Biden cashed in by arranging access to Joe Biden, the family brand. The Biden family and their associates received millions in payments from foreign sources, including from Russia, China, Ukraine, Romania. In one email, Hunter Biden even bragged that he cut a deal for $10 million from just one company for, quote, introductions alone. And yet the DOJ wanted to keep the spotlight as far from Joe Biden as possible. One of the items we released yesterday was an IRS interview with James Biden, the president's brother, in September of 2022. The agency was barred in the interview from asking him about Joe Biden and about whether Joe Biden was involved in Hunter Biden's deal with a Chinese energy company. And when Hunter Biden had his tax liability of over $2 million mysteriously paid for by a Democrat Party donor named Kevin Morris, who he barely knew, something IRS investigators saw as a possible campaign finance violation, Assistant U.S. Attorney Leslie Wolf said she did not want any of the agents to look into the allegation. On the board are notes Agent Shapley took from that meeting. He notes that Wolf told investigators that she was not, quote, personally interested in pursuing it. This is the same attorney, Wolf, who in an email we released yesterday responded to IRS investigators seeking approval for a search warrant with, quote, there should be nothing about political figure one in here, that being a reference by definition of Joe Biden. The Biden family sold access to Joe Biden's power, and the Biden Justice Department protected the Biden brand. We must continue to follow the facts. I yield to Jim. I yield to Representative Jordan.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. This is a tale as old as time. Politician takes action that makes money for his family, and then he tries to conceal it. Never forget 4 fundamental facts. Hunter Biden gets put on the board of Burisma. Gets paid a lot of money. Hunter Biden's not qualified, fact number 2, to sit on the board. Not my words, his words. He said he got on the board because of the brand, because of the name. Fact number 3, the executives at Burisma asked Hunter Biden to weigh in and help them with the pressure they are under from the prosecutor in Ukraine. Fact number 4, Joe Biden goes to Ukraine on December 9th, 2015, gives the speech attacking the prosecutor that starts the process of getting that guy fired. Those facts, by the way, are consistent with what the confidential human source told the FBI, and the FBI recorded in the 1023 form, the same form that the Justice Department didn't want to let this committee see. And all those facts, all of that was further confirmed yesterday with the information that the Ways and Means Committee released from the whistleblowers Shapley and Ziegler. Here's a communication from Hunter Biden to an executive with Burisma. Devin and I do feel comfortable with Blue Star strategies and the ability of Sally and Karen to deliver. Hunter Biden put Burisma in touch with Blue Star Strategies. What were they going to deliver? Well, that was in a communication released yesterday as well. U.S. officials in Ukraine and in the United States need to express support for Burisma and Nikolai Zalsevsky to the highest level decision makers, the President of Ukraine, the President's Chief of Staff, and the Prosecutor General. That's what they were going to deliver. And were they successful? The Interior Minister confirmed that Zolochevsky is no longer wanted. We won in less than a year communications between the folks at Blue Star and Eric Sherwin, who was Hunter Biden's business partner. Awesome work. Congratulations to you guys. Those are the communications. That's what they got done. And remember, when this happens in October 2016, when the pressure is taken off, the case is dropped against Zolochevsky, this is the second prosecutor. Joe Biden fired the first one. The second prosecutor comes in, drops the charges. That's exactly what they wanted done. And the final step is the Biden Justice Department tries to sweep it all under the rug. They slow walk the investigation. They let the statute of limitations lapse for the most important years, 14 and 15, the Burisma years when all that income's coming in. They try to put together this sweetheart deal and get it past the judge. And we learned yesterday in the search warrant examining Hunter Biden's electronic communications, they weren't allowed to ask about political figure one. Political figure number one is the big guy, is Joe Biden. And they would have gotten away with it all. They would have gotten away with it all except for two brave whistleblowers who sat in those seats 2 months ago and told their story. And their story has stood up. Two brave whistleblowers and a judge in Delaware who said, we're not going to let this happen. That's why we're here today. That's why this inquiry is so darn important. It's the oldest story in the world, and those are the facts. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Ranking Member Raskin of Maryland for his opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Before I give my opening statement, I have a parliamentary inquiry. Given that the committee has not been authorized by the full House to conduct an impeachment inquiry, am I correct in assuming that we're obligated to follow the rules of the House, including Section 370 of the Rules and Manual, which prescribe engaging in personalities towards the president? At ease.
How does the best basketball player of all time make more
Radio
money in
Primitive
his
FM.
retirement than when he was playing basketball?
Radio Primitive FM, c'est la musique, l'évangélisation, la parole vivante de Dieu avec Pasteur Ralph Cadet.
Considering this is an investigation of
Radio
Joe Biden,
Primitive
I
FM.
assume that his name's going to come up.
Right, but the House has not authorized us as an impeachment inquiry, so we're just operating with the general rules. And I think saying that the president lied is considered engaging in a personality. In fact, Section 370 says accusations that the president has committed a crime or even that the president has done something illegal are unparliamentary. And we're operating with the general rules of the House because the House has not authorized.
The Speaker of the House has authorized the impeachment inquiry. It has been authorized.
Okay. All right.
Point of parliamentary inquiry.
The ranking member, who wants to be recognized? Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
I believe changing of the rules must require a vote from the full House of Representatives. The rules of the committee.
The chair overrules a point of order. While articles of impeachment are not directly before this committee, we are looking into the potential wrongdoing of the president. Given the unique nature and subject matter of today's hearing topic, these words will not be ruled out of order. So,
okay.
Ranking Member Ashton, please proceed.
Thank you for clarifying, Mr. Chairman. We obviously have an honest disagreement about that. All right, so let's get it straight. We're 62 hours away from shutting down the government of the United States of America, and Republicans are launching an impeachment drive based on a long debunked and discredited lie. No foreign enemy has ever been able to shut down the government of the United States, but now MAGA Republicans are about to do just that. But they don't want to cut off public services to the people and deny paychecks to more than 1 million service members without first launching an impeachment drive, even when they don't have a shred of evidence against President Biden for an impeachable offense. And you think I'm being harsh? Here's what some Republicans have had to say over the last week about the actions of the Republicans as they watch up close, quote, the dysfunction caucus at work, in the words of our GOP colleague from Nebraska, Don Bacon. Clown show, foolishness, terribly misguided, stupidity, failure to lead, lunatics, disgraceful, new low, pathetic, enabling Chairman Xi, people that have serious issues. Those folks don't have a plan, show just how broken they are, and individuals that just want to burn the whole place down. Now, if I said any of these things, they'd probably take my words down, but these are Republicans talking about Republicans. So let's be clear, this isn't partisan warfare America's seeing today. It is chaotic infighting between Republicans and Republicans. It's MAGA versus extreme MAGA, as if anybody in the real world could tell the difference between the two. What a staggering failure of leadership. Speaker McCarthy's invertebrate appeasement of the most fanatical elements of his conference now threatens the well-being of every American. Now, some people think the members of the GOP caucus aren't interested in anything logical. They just want to see the world burn, as Alfred Pennyworth put it in The Dark Knight. But I see a method in the madness. A week ago, Donald Trump posted a comment saying that a government shutdown, quote, is the last chance to defund these political prosecutions against me and other patriots. You get it? To delay justice, Donald Trump would cut off paychecks to a couple million service members and federal workers and furlough more than 1 million workers and pay them later for having not worked. They would halt food assistance to millions of moms and kids and keep NIH in my district from enrolling any more patients in life and death clinical research trials. Trump's convinced that if we shut the government down, his 4 criminal prosecutions on 91 different felony and misdemeanor charges will be defunded and delayed long enough to keep him from having to go before a jury of his peers before the 2024 election. And like flying monkeys on a mission for the Wicked Witch of the West, Trump's followers in the House now carry his messages out to the world. Shut down the government. Shut down the prosecutions. But the cult master has another command for his followers, which brings us here today. On August 27th, he posted this edict: either impeach the bum or fade into oblivion. They did it to us. Of course, the standard for impeachment is not whether they did it to us, but whether the president committed treason or bribery or other high crimes and misdemeanors. But the Constitution's irrelevant to them. What counts is what Donald Trump wants. As Republican Representative Ken Buck, a Freedom Caucus member, told CNN the other day, President Trump has gone on his social media account and said we should be impeaching President Biden. Kevin McCarthy said we have an impeachment inquiry. You draw the conclusion, directly or indirectly, this impeachment inquiry was a result of President Trump's pressure. So we move from a Trump-ordered government shutdown to a Trump-ordered impeachment process, and yet back in the reality-based world, the majority sits completely empty-handed with no evidence of any presidential wrongdoing, no smoking gun, no smoke. In fact, we have had to slide awkwardly into a House impeachment process without the benefit of the floor vote that Speaker McCarthy insisted was absolutely imperative and necessary when Donald Trump was impeached. In fact, they went to the Department of Justice and they got an OLC opinion saying, quote, no committee may undertake the momentous move from legislative oversight to impeachment without the delegation by the full House of such authority. OLC opinion, January 19th, 2020. And that's why the House voted in the case of Donald Trump, but that's exactly what has not happened here because they don't have the votes, because dozens of Republicans recognize what a futile and absurd process this is. Now, the title of the hearing is The Basis for an Impeachment Inquiry of President Joseph Biden. And yet, they present us no basis at all today, even after 8 months of investigation. They've invited 3 witnesses to testify. Not one of them is an eyewitness to a presidential crime of any kind. Not one of them is a direct fact witness about any of the events related to Ukraine and Burisma. Not one of them has participated in the 8 months of investigation.
Listen, there's a good chance somebody's trying to hack your website right now. You gotta make sure.
In which our distinguished chairman has publicly boasted that he received 100% of everything he asked for. And I quote, every subpoena that I've signed as chairman of the House Oversight Committee over the last 5 months, we've gotten 100% of what we've requested, whether it's with the FBI, with the banks, or with Treasury. That means we are the real witnesses here. In fact, the committee has received 12,000 pages of bank records. Here they are, right in front of us, printed double-sided, and not a single page shows a dime going to President Joe Biden. We've received 2,000 pages of SARS reports the chairman subpoenaed. We've held hearings and conducted interviews with everybody from Hunter Biden's business partners to a federal agent assigned to that investigation, and still we found no evidence of wrongdoing by President Biden. If the Republicans had a smoking gun or even a dripping water pistol, they would be presenting it today, but they've got nothing on Joe Biden. All they can do is return to the thoroughly demolished lie that Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump launched 5 years ago, the Burisma conspiracy theory, a fairy tale so preposterous that one of its main authors, Lev Parnas, has now disowned and repudiated it. This is the theory that Vice President Biden, global anti-corruption groups, and most Western governments targeted Ukraine Prosecutor General Shokin for removal because he was threatening the Burisma Corporation, whose board Hunter Biden served on. Trump synthesized the lie in his August 27th post about President Biden, saying, look, the guy got bribed. He paid people off, and he wouldn't give $1 billion to Ukraine unless they, quote, got rid of the prosecutor. Trump's story is the opposite of the truth. When Biden was VP, he worked as a key player in the Obama administration and global community's efforts to combat corruption in Ukraine. In late 2015, as part of a coordinated global effort, Biden called for the removal of Viktor Shokin, a corrupt Ukrainian prosecutor general who did nothing about corruption in Ukraine other than to participate in it, rather than assist British authorities who were actually investigating Burisma and its owner. Shokin consistently frustrated their efforts. The leadership provided by Biden was part of a broad bipartisan campaign to oppose corruption in Ukraine. In early 2016, Republican senators Ron Johnson, Rob Portman, and Mark Kirk wrote to the Ukrainian president assailing corruption in his country and urging him, quote, to press ahead with urgent reforms to the prosecutor general's office. Yet years later, in 2018, as President Trump saw Biden as a strong rival in the 2020 election, he worked with Giuliani to twist all the facts around and to suddenly accuse Biden of corruption in calling for the dismissal of a corrupt prosecutor. A few months ago, Chairman Comer and the committee received an insider's account of the plan to concoct and spread this lie from an extraordinary letter sent to us by Lev Parnas, who was Rudy Giuliani's right-hand man. Giuliani and Parnas searched high and low to find anyone who would endorse their contortions about Biden. Their failing crusade culminated in the infamous phone call that then President Trump made to Ukrainian President Zelensky, in which Trump threatened to withhold hundreds of millions of dollars in economic, strategic, and military security assistance to Ukraine unless Zelensky embraced their ridiculous fabrication and falsely advertised to the world that Ukraine was investigating Joe Biden. This shakedown became the basis for the first House impeachment of President Trump. Giuliani's big lie thoroughly.
Vous êtes fatigué d'entendre de mauvaises nouvelles et de fausses doctrines? Alors Radio Primitive FM est votre seule référence en matière d'information et votre seule source d'information.